Hi guys, welcome to today's podcast episode. Now this is an important topic that I hear so much about these days in Instagram feeds, in advertisements, in conversations with women, and I have a take that I personally don't think is represented enough. And so I want to add my voice to the conversation and share some beliefs around aging and aging naturally, aging gracefully, aging with joy that I don't think are mentioned enough and that really help me and give me hope and excitement for this process versus the ones that I think women hear a lot, which is you should be fearful of it. You should be fixing things left and right. You should be doing, Botox or fillers or whatever it may be. And I personally have chosen not to do those things. And, no shade against any woman and her personal choice and what makes her feel good. But I have some beliefs that I just want to share and some thoughts that I'm continually reframing in my own mind that have helped me look forward to aging and even enjoy and celebrate the marks that I'm starting to see on my face and around my eyes and smile lines and things like that. So I want to share them today in the hopes that they help you feel like you can live your life a little bit more joyfully and with more peace and with more just excitement around this journey that we're all on and fortunate enough to be on, right? If we're still here and actually aging. Okay, so I'm gonna walk through a few of these. I feel like there are three kind of main sections and thoughts that help me. And what I learned early on is that you really have to be the keeper of your own mind here, that if you don't choose what to believe, you are going to be fed so much information and messaging from social media, from companies with a vested interest in making a lot of money, and from just like the conversations around you. So like with anything, whether it's your beliefs about what you're capable of in your dreams, whether it's your money beliefs, whether it's your beliefs about relationships and what's possible there, you really have to sometimes be the one to choose your beliefs and actively pick what you're going to allow in or not, because otherwise there's going to be so many people and companies with a vested interest in having you believe what they want you to believe, right? So here's one of the first things that helps me, and it's to look at the little marks on my face as like positive things. So for example, I have these little smile lines starting, or I guess they're smile lines, maybe eye lines off the corners of my eyes. And I know a lot of people want to get rid of those and they'll assign a name like crow's feet to them. But for me, when I look at those lines, I see like starbursts. I'm just like, I feel like they are, both in myself and others, just these little lines, almost like how the sun gets rays coming off of it in midday, and it's a sign of light and positivity and joy. That's how I choose to see those. So when I'm looking at someone else, I'm thinking, gosh, they have the most amazing starbursts coming off of their eyes. They must have smiled a lot in their lifetime. And so it becomes really hard to want to fix those things or to want to change them when you have that perspective. Like when I see these little lines coming off of my eyes, it brings me joy. It's like my little starburst lines, okay? So again, the messaging could be crow's feet. It could be stop them, freeze them, get rid of them. But why would I want to get rid of something if I attach that positive association to it? So I try and do that with any marks that I see that I know society is going to try and have me change or dislike. When I see my forehead lines, which I have had fine lines in my forehead since I was like 19 years old. I'm 37 now. And I swear I could see those lines forming since I was barely 20. But I once heard another woman describe them as like her curiosity lines, because the way that you get them is by raising your forehead in curiosity. And my mom says I've been doing that since I was a little girl, a little toddler. I've always been like wide-eyed, looking at things, looking up at people and with just, I don't know, curiosity, excitement, interest. And so when I see those lines, I try and really look at them as like those lines represent the curiosity that I've always had about life. And so if they're here now, if they get deeper, when they get deeper, gosh, it just means that I've been really interested, and for anyone else, they've been really interested in life as well. So that's a reframe for those. And then, the lines around your mouth or smile lines, those I think of, and maybe you do as well, but as you've been smiling, like you have literally been smiling to get those lines. And the only way I see them is if I'm not smiling, right? Then I can see the lines. But if I have a big smile on my face, I can't even see them because my mouth is just in a smile and it's creased the lines really naturally. And so I think, why would I trade those lines? I'm glad that I've been smiling. I'm glad I've had so much joy. I'm glad I've been able to, try and maintain a positive outlook in any circumstance that I can. And the same for you, like if you have any of those lines or marks, maybe those reframes kind of help you versus what you may hear some other company or someone trying to tell you that makes you dislike those lines instead. So that's the first thing, is I remember I'm the keeper of my mind, and I choose a meaning that supports me and makes me feel more lit up versus one that makes me look at those lines or marks as negative, okay? The second perspective shift that has really helped me is I was listening to this woman. Her handle and brand is called Midlife Muse. So if you haven't checked her out, definitely go give her a follow or a listen, because she has so much gold on this topic. But she said that she once went to a wine tasting with her son, and he invited her out one night, kind of impromptu. He's going to be with a bunch of friends out in Miami, and so, she showed up. She's like, you don't miss a chance when your adult son invites you out. Of course, you want to go and meet his friends. And when she got there, she's a woman who's chosen to really embrace the aging process and to not, color her hair, to not get any Botox or anything like that, but just to see what comes from, embracing the more natural side of aging. And so, as you can imagine, in a city like Miami, that might stand out a little bit more, because so many women and men do all that they can to kind of prevent that and stop the time clocks. So anyway, when she went to this wine night with her son, all the women were like, oh my gosh, that's your mom? And they wanted to huddle around her and say, what's your skincare routine? Oh my gosh, your skin glows. And what she said is, girls, listen close. I do not have a skincare routine. I have a soul care routine. And now that may sound a little woo to some of you, but I loved that, because I think that is the essence of when you see an older man or an older woman and they have so much spark and so much life about them. I really believe that is their soul shining out of them. That's not their 12-step skincare regimen. That's not that they've stayed inside perfectly for their entire lifetime. That's not that they have the best doctors and plastic surgeons. That is just their essence shining through, and you know it and you feel it when you see it, no matter what you believe about spirituality or religion. Most of us can feel that when we meet an older person that just shines and is radiant. And so I have always adopted that perspective ever since I heard that and heard her say that. She taught those women more about what she does to care for her soul than for her skin. So to her, it means things like saying positive words to herself in the mirror when she wakes up, being careful with what she consumes and what conversations and social media and advertisements, she allows around her, and really leaning into this process as one that can be beautiful. So for me, that's something I try and keep in mind. I definitely think you can see the difference, even when maybe you've gone through a harder season and you just feel like your skin and your body shows it. It just seems like it feels more lackluster. So I think there's really some truth to your soul and how alive you feel and how vibrant shows out and reflects out. And so for me, I try and just make sure that I'm doing that to whatever extent I can, that I'm spending time, every day to do things that bring me joy, that fulfill my soul, that I'm speaking kind words to myself and to others. Maybe you've heard of the experiment and study that's been done where you have two plants, and on one of the plants you say negative things, you say hateful things to it. That plant withers. the other plant that you say positive things to, it grows more vibrantly. So this is like actually a measured thing. So imagine the impact you as a living thing, if you're saying negative, horrible things to yourself and a plant withered, imagine an entire being such as a human and what that does to your cells that make up your body, just as cells make up a plant. So I try and really adopt that in whatever scale I can and just say nice things. I know, we all have intrusive thoughts from time to time, and we are all bombarded by so much messaging that sometimes it can be hard to completely control the narrative. But to whatever extent I can, I try and reframe things with some of the thoughts that I mentioned in like the first perspective shift, or just make sure that I'm doing things that feed my soul, that bring that vibrancy back to my face, to my body, to my life, and trust that that's kind of taking care of the rest, right? That's taking good care of my body to the extent that I can. Okay, and then the third thing that I try and remember, the third perspective shift, is to think about how you see these things on someone else. So for example, when I was a little girl, I remember like how my mom's arms looked to me, where in the sunshine, they had so many freckles, and I start to see my own arms look like that now. Again, I'm 37. And so it reminds me of her, and it kind of makes me smile because yes, even though I don't have this perfectly porcelain skin anymore, it's definitely starting to get little sunspots and freckles. Like, it reminds me of my mom. And the same thing with like so many other people in my life. Like, I look at my husband's grandmother, who is still with us and so vibrant herself, and I love like the way that her face looks and her skin looks. I've heard people mention that, they love like the delicate skin on their grandmother's hands. When I see my husband and like the lines off of his eyes, it makes me happy because it reminds me of the happy life that we're creating together. My mom has mentioned that with her husband, like that she likes the lines coming off of his face as, crinkles, because again, it's a joyful thing. So if it helps you to kind of reframe it by thinking of how you see it for someone else, then that can be a nice thing as well. I've even heard people say, like, I've seen, reels or stuff on Instagram where people will say, showing older dogs and their silver sparkle or their glitter or something like with their hair when they get the silver threads through their face. And like, yes, a dog is not a human, but so many of us love our dogs and pets so much that if you can look at them and their sweet little aging bodies and their silver hairs and think you're so much, cuter as you get older, then maybe you can extend the same grace to yourself as well, right? Okay, and then the last perspective. So I can't remember if I said I would give you 3 or 4, but if it's a bonus if I said 3. So here's a 4th perspective that really helps. Is when I do start to see marks that, again, society would tell me I need to fix or get rid of or be embarrassed by, such as sunspots, right? The little spots I'm starting to get around my eyes or things like that. I try and really let it reflect me the life that I have lived and all the memories that have come from those things. So yes, I could have, perhaps like less skin spots, less freckles, things like that. But, I went to college in California at my dream school, and I loved walking that campus to school every day. And I felt so proud and so honored to get to go to my dream school. That felt so out of reach before I went. It's making me emotional thinking about all these things. Like, I love that in the summers I float in the Mediterranean and the Adriatic Sea, and I look up and I feel grateful for this life that I live and that I'm creating, with my loved ones. And so I wouldn't trade all of those memories for this quote unquote perfect skin, right? Because those are like the stories of the best moments of my life. And so maybe you have those things as well, whether it's like the stretch marks from, bringing a baby into the world, or, breastfeeding, or like gaining weight because you were so happy and in love at the time, or conversely, it be gaining weight because that's what you needed to do to survive some experiences in your life and to be able to self-soothe. It's like just embracing that all of these marks are part of your story. And yes, people can tell you, that they're wrong or that you should be embarrassed about them. But like, I look at them and I'm just like, but what a life is inside them and is reflected because of them. I could have the perfect 20-step routine and I could never go outside, but if I get to old age and my face is more weathered because I spent years traveling the world and doing what to me is the most fulfilling version of the life I could lead, and living in cities, where there's maybe more pollution, but where I felt so alive, like that's okay with me. Like that's a worthwhile trade from trying to compete with what someone else might look like who's lived a completely different life in different circumstances. And so I kind of have made peace with those marks, or how the aging process goes. It's like, gosh, what a life is contained inside all of that. All right, so gosh, that's like a lot of information, but that's how I have really started to think about this aging process. And I'm not perfect. I have my moments like anyone else, and I see the content that's thrown at women like anyone else. And so, it's not always like my thoughts are all positive and jolly about this stuff. But again, I do remember that I'm the keeper of my own mind, and that my thoughts are one of the most powerful tools that I have control over, and that I can reframe at any moment to choose ones that bring me back to empowerment, to finding beauty, instead of disgust, to feeling powerful instead of like weak, or at the mercy of some process or someone else or some brand. And I'm working through many of my own things, but those things really help me. And so I have been thinking about this as I hear more and more about it, the older I get, and I thought I need to add this perspective to the mix. And so hope it encourages you if you're right there with me. And again, it's kind of like giving yourself grace on the process. So even if there's things that you're still wrestling with, or things that you're still thinking through, just knowing like maybe this is brought into your awareness for a bigger reason, and it's something that you may be ready to be more tender with yourself around, or to adopt a different perspective around, or to just experiment with, right? Like there's no perfect way to do it. Again, it's what makes you feel good. And so if it makes you feel good to do something about these things, great. If it makes you feel good to adopt a different perspective and framework for your life, then good as well, right? But that's just what I want to offer today. And I hope it supports you in living your version of your brightest, most fulfilling life. And I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you again soon.